Hey, I wanted to do kind of a reaction of Chris Blec versus Chris Hart. Okay, it's not really Chris Blec versus Richard Hart, sorry. But this is a great video. This was hosted or done by Chris Blec on DeFi. By the way, he has a great YouTube channel. Highly recommend you come over here, subscribe, hit the bell notification icon. It's a very this is not, which project's going to get you your next gains, but he's very informative, and his content can go a long ways from keeping you from getting scammed in the crypto DeFi space. It's I've not seen a lot of his content, but he does a good job explaining certain DeFi projects, what they are, how they work. He does a great job on his channel. And he takes a strong issue with projects that call themselves decentralized finance that are not truly decentralized. Many of you will remember, if you've been following my channel for a while, a few days ago, a week or so ago, I did a video called DeFi Scams. I'll put that link above if you did not see that, but I talk about some of the top ways that you can get scammed in the DeFi space. And he basically covers that type of content very well on his channel. But here he's doing a video, he's doing a live stream. I guess he does this periodically. It's an awesome format. I really like it. Like I watched this and I was like, man, I wanted to be in here. Richard Hart is phenomenal. I mean, he does such a great job of breaking down topics that most people simply don't understand in this space. Ladies and gentlemen, if you want to make real gains in this space, understand the space. Why does crypto even exist? Why fundamentally, what are the reasons that crypto should do well long term? Understand fundamentally, why is it decentralized finance is a thing? And why does it have such great potential? Anyway, they start talking about some topics in here that are phenomenal. I feel like my viewers could benefit from it, and I really wanted to comment on some of what they were saying. So this is kind of my reaction to their video. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to make this larger. Again, I'm going to put Chris Blec. I don't know if these other guys are YouTubers or not, the ether.io. I looked at that. I was not exactly sure what that was, but I'll put Richard Hart's channel for sure and Chris Blec's channel for sure down in the comments. All right, let's get started. I'm sorry, down in the description. All right, let's get started.
What we're talking about. Let's just dive right into it and try to have like an interesting, organized chat, because I'm pretty sure we can do that. Harvest. So last time we did a live stream, this hadn't happened yet, and I did that blog post. It was a coincidence. My blog post was about a different issue that could still happen, right, with the admin key. But coincidentally, then we had this exploit, which wasn't an admin key issue, but it was related to the complexity of what Harvest is trying to do. So in a nutshell, what happened, in case you guys didn't dive into this, and Harvest actually put out a really good blog post that goes through all the details of it. But what happened here was similar to other exploits that we've seen in the past, where it's not about using the admin key in a nefarious way. It's not about the core team kind of like sneaking around doing transactions that affect the code or the protocol in any way. It's about the protocol being used basically as coded, but in a way or with a level of speed, or in a way that's manipulative to basically drain funds. And what happened here, and anybody can jump in to correct me if I don't get this right, because I'm not a developer and I'm just trying to understand as best as I can. But basically, in a nutshell, what the manipulator slash attacker slash whatever we want to call it, maybe we should come up with that name during this chat too. But what they did was they developed a smart contract that would process how many? I think it's like 17 transactions, 17 transactions between Harvest and Curve that basically manipulated the price with such high frequency that nobody was able to notice it until afterwards. And in doing that, they just arbitraged the hell out of it and walked away with $24 million worth of crypto. I'm trying to explain it in the most plain English ways possible. Any of you guys, can you guys attest to what I just said? Is there anything that's inaccurate? Anybody in the chat? I'm trying to just get it down to the nitty gritty. And that's basically what it was. Like, there was no hack per se. There was no, it was just using it in a way that's high speed to arbitrage and walk away with the funds. And then after that, obviously, they wash the funds or laundering the funds, whatever. But
I think I can do a good job of explaining it simply.
give it a try.
In trading, you take other people's money from them, and they try and take your money from you. It's not the best thing in the world, but it's what most of crypto is.
I want to pause that right there. I love his explanation there because he's exactly right. Trading is a zero sum game. So someone makes money, someone loses money. I think this is interesting because sometimes get comments where people will say things like, "Oh, that project's going to be a zero sum game," or "There's winners and losers." And I'm always like, "What are you talking about? There are winners and losers in everything. I don't care if you're sitting down at the blackjack table. I don't care if you're going to the grocery store buying and selling stuff. Like, there's an exchange of something that's intended to be of value. And the stock market is a little bit different. When you buy something, yes, I'm paying money, I get a stock, but I'm buying that stock for hopes that it goes up. But it has to go down as well. When it goes down, somebody else makes money. When it goes up, I make money. There's no situation in which the buyer and the seller of a stock is going to both make money. There's always an exchange. There's always a feedback loop that occurs in everything. So I love that he said that. And he said it very blunt. Richard oftentimes has a way of saying things, and he understands before he says it that it's not palatable, but it's the reality.
So if you sold Ethereum at $87 and now it's $400, did you perform an exploit? Did you perform a hack? No, but you lost a lot of potential money and someone else made that money. So every single time you have a trading system, so we'll take a very basic one that people might understand, a leverage position. Let's say that you go margin long Ethereum at $400 and someone decides to push the price down by selling their Ethereum. They push the price down by selling into it, and then they close their shorts. Or in this case, the margin long guy is going to get liquidated. So in the normal world of trading that everyone understands, if you can hold a price down for 30 minutes, you win your bet. If you can hold a price up for 30 minutes, you win your bet, because time is what is used to prevent manipulation. Poorly designed by idiots, decentralized finance contracts are too stupid to do what legacy has figured out for 100 years, and that you must include a time component to prevent manipulation, or everyone will game the system and reap profit, which doesn't really help anybody. BZX has been hacked multiple times this way. Uniswap V2 built a feature to help people stop getting hacked this way and to use a time-weighted average price, just like legacy. But these DeFi idiots are too stupid to use it. And so what they have...
Explain a time-weighted average price. Like, what exactly?
Sure.
How do you...
By the way, see what I mean? He calls everybody idiots. He's very blunt about this. I want to point out something. He says legacy. Not everyone watching may understand what he means by that. When he says legacy, he's talking about traditional financial markets, legacy DeFi, like, the normal Wall Street. Well, there's no such thing as legacy DeFi. Legacy markets like normal Wall Street.
Explain that.
So you decide that you're gonna. So first, let's get this out of the way. People are going to try and demonize flash loans. If you're trying to demonize flash loans, you're stupid. Flash loans are just the same thing whales can do. They're giving you access to more capital. That's it. What a flash loan can't do is sustain manipulation, because you have to pay the loan back at the end of the block, and the block is 13 seconds.
So I get the impression, by the way, and I could be wrong, I'm just looking at facial expressions, this guy seems to agree with Richard a lot. I see these guys here, and maybe even Chris a little bit, almost want to disagree, but he's so good at articulating his position that they can't really disagree, and they end up going along with a lot of what he says. And now I could be totally wrong, but those of you who are watching, let me know in the comments if you get that impression as well.
So you can only manipulate price using flash loans for a few seconds. So if you're smart and do what Legacy figured out 100 years ago, you don't give a shit about flash loans, because you can't manipulate the price for a prolonged period of time, because if you try and push it somewhere it doesn't belong, another whale comes and beats up your arbitrage. It's like people that think it's free to manipulate the price. If you try and manipulate the price and push the price up, a big old whale will come along and shove it back down, and then you lost money. Now you've got to like sell lower. Like, it's The solution to all of this crap is time-weighted average prices.
So what I'm
And
hearing you
that's
say
it.
is that you don't think anything was done wrong here. Like you're saying that
If
this
you,
is
if
a
you,
traditional tactic
yes,
that's used in trading
yes,
every day.
yes.
You know, and
And like,
most of us, it's interesting the different angles to look at this from, and it's probably why there's such a clash of sort of ethics here, is like you are looking at this from the point of view of somebody who's obviously worked in or around trading at some point, you know, and sort of worked with traders
Bless you, Eric. Did you see that heck of a sneeze that my man threw out?
or done your own day trading or whatever, and you see, oh,
Bro, it looked like you wanted to pick his nose right then. Swear to God.
of course, like who isn't trying to move the price if they can? Like who isn't trying to manipulate it in this way or that way? And that's basically what's happening here. And then on the other side is the DeFi crowd who's coming from the tech point of view, who's like, well, we weren't really aware of this because we're not really so into trading as much as we are in development and just trying to figure out how to make this stuff awesome. And then these two worlds collide, and it's like one side is like, of course this happened. And the other side is like, what a bad person this was who did this to us.
there's a solution to this.
The irony here is what a bad person. The guy who's designing DeFi, decentralized finance, is supposed to exist for a reason. And it is ultimately to create a very efficient marketplace where you don't have to have human interaction. That is the ultimate goal. It's totally decentralized. There's not a centralized authority. So the idea that Chris says that someone could look at a decent, be like, oh, wow, I can't believe that would have happened. What do you mean you can't believe that would have happened? Like, you forget human nature is not going to exploit. Can I just be very honest? It's $25 million. Can someone, I mean, is there anyone who would be willing to comment as a liar and say, I would not be tempted to do that if I knew that I could do it and I had the technical expertise and I would get away with it for $25 million? For like, so the idea that humans would not exploit something, and for $25 million, which you can make an argument all day long, which by the way, I think they ended up saying this project ended up having $1 billion. So 25 million was a small drop in the bucket, but still, I mean, the idea that somehow DeFi developers are shocked that people would try to exploit their projects. I couldn't even wrap my brain around that. Let's back up just a little bit. I want to hear that explanation a little bit better.
It's like, well, we weren't really aware of this because we're not really so into trading as much as we are in development and just trying to figure out how to make this stuff awesome. And then these two worlds collide, and it's like one side is like, of course this happened. And the other side is like, what a bad person this was who did this to us.
There's a solution to this. And the solution.
So this is interesting too, because if you know anything about Chris, he's very big about decentralized. Like he's very big on, and I've only watched a couple of his videos, so I may miss part of the gist, but I was shocked because my impression of him is he's really big on decentralized, truly being decentralized, which I find interesting because I want to be like, okay, if you want things to be decentralized, what is the purpose that you want it to be decentralized for? I mean, decentralization doesn't care about your ethics. It's like a free market system, a true free market system without government intervention, giving one guy or another a favored benefit, is ultimately about who serves the best products or services, who gives the most value, basically with the best products and services. That's ideally what a free market system would create if the playing field was leveled out, so to speak, and it would become very, very efficient. That's in a perfect world, and of course we don't have a perfect world. But DeFi, the idea is being able to create a system that doesn't require human intervention. So it's crazy to think that somehow you'd be shocked.
And you see, oh, of course, like who isn't trying to move the price if they can? Like who isn't trying to manipulate it in this way or that way? And that's basically what's happening here. And then on the other side is the DeFi crowd who's coming from the tech point of view, who's like, well, we weren't really aware of this because we're not really so into trading as much as we are in development and just trying to figure out how to make this stuff awesome. And then these two worlds collide, and it's like one side is like, of course this happened. And the other side is like, what a bad person this was who did this to us.
There's a solution to this. And the solution, quite simply, is getting more than one form of audit. So I'm not going to name any names, but you can get contract audits that verify that what you think you designed your contract to do, it's likely to do.
Ladies and gentlemen, this part here is really good. So catch this. And I say this because there's a lot of times you'll see projects. So the DSP token came out. The GXY token came out. The idea was the GXY token was going to fix a problem. But unfortunately, by shortening the stakes, but unfortunately in the GXY token, someone didn't understand what that might do to the entire ecosystem, how it could shift the entire ecosystem. Because of course there's no audit, they're just trying to play with numbers, and they're focused on fixing one problem without realizing that potentially they're about to create another problem. And of course, if someone would take in the time with any project that have these audits, listen to these different types of audits.
But you can also get an economics audit. I'm not going to name any names, but I know a coin that has an economics audit that says that the economic game
That would be Hex. Hex. That's what he wanted to say.
theory that you're trying to implement also works as you intend it to do. It's just like, well, you're not a developer. Certain tests don't catch certain failures. If you're doing unit tests, it doesn't catch business logic failures. If you're doing smart contract audits, it doesn't catch business logic failures. Mm-hmm. If you're relying on oracles, your oracle will lie to you, and it's outside your control. So you can't develop around it.
An oracle, just so you understand what he's talking about, an oracle is trusting some sort of centralized entity to give you, for example, a price. So if you have a project that's based around the current price of Bitcoin, but that Bitcoin price can be off a few cents or dollars depending on which exchange you're looking at. But the problem is you're oftentimes looking at a centralized exchange. So that centralized exchange could be your oracle. Well, if someone knows that you're relying on them, that's where he's saying manipulation can occur because they're a centralized exchange. They can absolutely manipulate the price by a little bit. I mean, we've all heard of exchanges stop hunting, for example, for stop losses.
So any DeFi system that has admin keys or oracles is actually a centralized piece of shit and a giant, huge risk. And crypto was designed to get rid of that. Crypto is designed to get rid of risk and get rid of counterparties. And the fact that people don't learn from 2017 ICOs, Mt. Gox, Quadriga CX, BTCE, Cryptopia, OKX hasn't done withdrawals in weeks, and they have the largest cold wallet in the history of crypto, like several 100,000 BTC. When are people going to learn? Not your keys, not your money. Do economics audits and game theory audits, contract audits and game theory audits, and stop putting your coins in the charge of other people. It's disgusting. It's the opposite of why crypto was invented. And how many hundreds of millions have to get lost? We couldn't say all the hacks that happened this week in the time allotted.
You're making good points about the actual, solution and why this happened and what the flaws are in the existing DeFi projects.
You want to talk ethics?
But well, that too. Yeah, I think. Well, I'm curious, what some of these other guys think too, like Ether and you other guys. What do you think? First of all, I don't know if we can really dispute what Richard's saying. Right? I don't know if it's about that, but it's more about
The answer to that is no. You can't dispute it. No, you can't dispute that.
When we look at these attacks that are happening right now, is there blame? And is there, even though it's doable from a technical point of view and it's not manipulating the code, is there some sort of ethics involved here? If we were to figure out who it was, from a ethical point of view, but also from a legal point of view, which I want to get into later. But what do you think, Ether?
So it's totally a design flaw, in my opinion. I actually wouldn't even classify this as a hack. It's not like I was able to, steal your password from your computer and log into your account and steal your funds that way. It was an exploitation of the rules that were written because of multiple different areas, including over-reliance on a single oracle. So in my opinion, it was very much an exploitation. Now, that being said, you brought up the question about it being ethical. So I want to bring up 2 points here. Market manipulation is against the law. There are rules, there are regulations, there are laws to prevent market manipulation. In my opinion,
in the U.S.,
this is awesome. Watch Richard's response.
DeFi, and I'm not a lawyer, but some of these DeFi exploitations could be interpreted as market manipulation. Now, are the regulators at the point where they're going to enforce this or at the point where they're understanding this. I don't know, but I do think in the future that some of these exploitations can be interpreted as market manipulation. So that's point one. Point number two, why do these exploitations keep on happening? Simple, it's greed. Too many protocols, too many development teams, too many projects, too many influencers are pushing projects to maximize their own self-interest without going through the proper security processes to ensure that they're safe for end users. I'm not a big regulation guy, but there are reasons why there are regulations in place in traditional markets. You have to go through a process before you issue a stock to the public, for example. You have to ensure that the markets are relatively safe for the people who are buying and selling your products. And with the absence of any sort of agency or accountability measure, you're going to see these things happen time and time again because the incentives are teams. Let me release this project, influencer. Let me push and pump this project. Doesn't matter who gets hurt. We've made our money. We're good.
Okay, so this is absolutely ridiculous. First of all, the thing that, I mean, this whole comment here is crazy. Like, you're not going to have, when you bring regulations into crypto, I think Richard mentions this, you add all sorts of inefficiencies. The whole point in having, particularly in the DeFi space, and when I say regulations, I mean to the actual finances. Of course, you shouldn't steal from each other, and that should be, in theory, you would like that to somehow be enforceable. But the idea that you're going to have a crypto market and you're going to have someone monitoring everything, you start to get away from DeFi in general. He says, I'm not a big regulations guy, but in fact, you are. The idea that you want someone to protect you. And he talked about, see, the whole thing right here. Let me back this up. This part here just bugs me.
You have to go through a process before. Why do these exploitations keep on happening? Simple, it's greed. Too many protocols, too many development teams, too many projects, too many influencers are pushing projects to maximize their own self-interest without going through the proper security processes.
So what's the answer to this? Now, this guy seems like a really bright technical guy. Let me address this first. Of course, people are self-interested. The idea that you're going to stop greed is just flawed. You will never live in a world where greed doesn't exist. Every human being inside of them has some level of self-interest. If you don't believe it, take you and me out into a body of water over our heads and suddenly, assume that neither one of us can swim or we're exhausted from swimming for so long and we're sitting there side by side. You are going to kill me trying to simply push me down to push yourself up to hold your head above water. That's the bottom line. Any lifeguard knows that a drowning victim is likely to accidentally drown you. Why? Because your life is dependent on self-preservation. The idea that you're going to determine what self-preservation is, it comes down to self-interest, to stay ahead, to get ahead, to stay alive. It is hardwired in us. Now, that doesn't mean that it's okay that you hurt somebody else, but you're going to have bad people and you're never going to get to a place where you're going to stop absolute greed. And he talks about they rush things to market. Do you understand? Like, most people don't understand this, so I don't expect you as a viewer to understand this, but that's true in the entire world of software. I tried to understand, I wanted to understand crypto a little bit better. So I took a cryptography security course once, and it was interesting. It was an online course and it was really good, but it was interesting. One of the things that kind of blew my mind was he talked about I had always been hesitant in the changing environment today to do software upgrades because I always felt like, I always wondered, not knowing, like, are they trying to make things more easier to track you online? Are they adding yada yada? I didn't ever know. I didn't understand it. When I found out through that course, this guy was very much about personal security and preventing government and companies from spying on your activities. And one of the things he said was mind-blowing. He said, always update your software, every single update. I don't care if it's Windows, I don't care if it's your Dell computer system, whatever it is, always update it. Almost every update is a security fix. They rush, and I recently had a buddy of mine he's retired now, but he was talking to me about software. He said, bosses always want things done faster than is possible and under budget. And what they care more about security, they care about functionality. So if something's functioning properly and it's sellable, it's going to go for sale. That's why Windows always updates. There's always bugs. There's always glitches. Same thing with, your a lot of your other computer softwares that are updating. Your phone's constantly updating every month or so, or sometimes twice a month. It's going to update. Most often, if you look at those updates, it's a security patch. So this idea, if traditional software is not going to go through mega audits to make certain they're secure and solid, etc., then what are the odds that we're suddenly going to see DeFi do it? I just think that was I think it's a little bit overreaching.
To ensure that they're safe for end users. I'm not a big regulation guy, but there are reasons why there are regulations in place in traditional markets. You have to go through a process before you issue a stock to the public, for example.
Listen, there's a lot of reasons that there are regulations in traditional markets, and I've talked about this on this channel many times. But one of the reasons that regulations are in place is to prevent the average person from getting access to some of the most profitable investments that exist in the marketplace. Hands down, no question about it. Some of the argument that you need to be an accredited investor. I think it's accredited. That's the right word. All that really means is you need to be able to have a lot of money, and then you get access to these. And the idea being that if you have a lot of money, somehow maybe you're smarter, or you could take a hit if it's a risky investment. But who's to say the guy with a lot of money doesn't put in too much money? I mean, there's not any sort of risk management profile. I literally believe that many times regulations are designed to stop this little person like you and me from competing with the quote unquote typical elite, the big dogs, or the trust fund babies with a lot of money. I literally believe that because I've watched I have had the chance before to be able to get into an investment. And then when I went to go fill out the accredited paperwork, I was like, wait, what? Like, I fully understand the investment. I know the risk. I know what it is. I've done my homework. I mean, it's just crazy. It's absolutely mind blowing, but let's keep going.
You have to ensure that the markets are relatively safe for the people who are buying and selling your products. And
part of what he's talking about the markets is meaning that the people that make up the market are going to be safe.
In the absence of any sort of agency or accountability measure, you're going to see these things happen time and time again because the incentives are teams. Let me release this project, influencer. Let me push and pump this project. Doesn't matter who gets hurt. We've made our money. We're good.
Now, the problem is he puts this in a bubble as if everybody who exists out there, every developer is just about the money. Every influencer is just about the money. And you have zero ethics whatsoever. It's mind-blowing because that's kind of the broad strokes that he's painting. And obviously that's not totally accurate.
Interesting take. And we had a chat comment here. This is an unregulated market. And here's the thing. It's not an unregulated market. Every market is subject to the same regulations in jurisdictions where those regulations exist. So.
No, they're not. That's just entirely not true.
What are you talking about?
This is awesome right here. And again, Richard's ability to articulate his own stage right now.
All of the relevant government agencies in the U.S. have said that all of crypto is subject to the same sorts of regulations as traditional markets until they're not.
No, that's not true. Well, I mean, first, it's obvious that there's different levels of regulation because there's different entities that handle those different levels. Let me name a few for you. FinCEN, money transmitter rules. What else do they do? The reciprocity rules, the travel rule in between exchanges where you have to know your customer and know the receiving customer's bank's customer, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, well, that's one level. What else do you have? CFTC. What do they regulate? Commodities. So where do we see that in DeFi? People putting time limits on how long your order can sit on the book. So FinCEN is not CFTC, is not the SEC, and the SEC controls security tokens, public offerings, disclosures. And so the concept that you think that there's regulation when you're dealing with a security so first of all, if you put your money into a common pool with the expectation of profit solely from the work of others, you are a security in the United States. Period.
This is awesome right here. Listen to this explanation. This is really important And I say it's important because as investors, your risk could be limited potentially, but you need to understand why it's possible. It's not going to happen today. Regulations are too far behind, but it's possible in the next year or 2 or 3, you could have an investment really go south. So it's worth at least being aware of for your future investments.
Period. So here we have this farm token, and this farm guy controls the keys, and this farm guy decides what gets added and what doesn't get added, and sets $400,000 bounties for people that have hacked him. That is a lot of work from a person who's anonymous, I might add, because people put their money into a common pool. Hold on a second. People put their money into a common pool with the expectation of profit solely from the work of this guy, or primarily, right? And is it sufficiently decentralized, to quote the SEC's guidance? No, it's not. It's a fucking security. And do we see this all over crypto? Yes, we see this all over crypto, because apparently people don't mind breaking the law. Some people have to follow the law and not make promises of future things and not launch unfinished
Oh, here's the hex plug. Here's the hex plug.
garbage. Launch fully audited, complete things with no promises, no price forward-looking statements like, oh, we're going to $1 million Bitcoin and all that crap, right? To find projects like that are extremely rare. Uniswap will be one of them that surprise launched and has very minimal admin key functionality. And I can't talk about the other one.
There's a really good, and by the way,
Because the other one's Hex, and obviously he agreed not to talk about it on this podcast. That's awesome, or on this stream. But he was talking about Hex, in case you didn't know.
I accept that, and there's a really good thread from Gabriel Shapiro, who's a lawyer who's somehow related to crypto. I don't even directly know how, but he talks about this. I tweeted it before. I'll put a link into the chat here, but he talks about the different ways that this might have been considered legal, illegal, from that point of view. And he says if you assume securities are involved, it could come down to a fraud/manipulation thing. And it's a good thread. I highly recommend everybody read it. So the
By the way,
question,
people
and by the way, I accept what you said there about me being incorrect about, is this a regulated market in the same way that other markets are? For me, it gets confusing.
The closest thing in this market would be I didn't even cover it in my original statement there. There's another layer for consumer protection, which is civil mostly, just like the SEC is civil. It's not a criminal. They can't bring criminal charges against you. They have to refer that to the Department of Justice. These are civil entities.
Where does fraud come in, though? I mean, at some point, isn't there a fraud
That's
argument?
the state attorney general would bring that case.
Okay.
And that would fall under truth in advertising, consumer protection. If you want to be realistic about this stuff, there's the theory of what type of prosecutions could potentially exist, and then there's a reality of what's really going to happen.
This is a great statement, by the way. The theory of what could happen and the reality of what's going to happen. However, it's important also, I've watched this regulation shift happen in other industries, and when I say I've not ever been anything that was totally unregulated per se like crypto, but I've watched where there was very lax regulations, and over time those regulations changed, and people, or in this case projects or companies, which were not necessarily the worst offenders, were prosecuted harshly, almost to make an example. So it's worth being aware, if you're an investor in this space, as regulations creep in, it's going to get very, very interesting. And I actually think one of the first areas is going to be the IRS. I think some of these developers, which are making a tremendous amount of income, are having in crypto, will have to pay gains on this. I mean, there's just too much to move around. If they use it at all in their real life, it's going to be obvious. They've got to account for where it came from. At some point, the IRS is going to look into what exactly you're doing. What is the source of that crypto? It may not be this year, but at some point it's going to happen. And I think that's when they're going to get into all sorts of projects that they don't fully understand. And the government's always looking to regulate something. They're always looking to get their piece of the pie somehow, eventually. And I think that's when we're going to start seeing a lot more new regulations. So it's important to recognize you could be in a project today that can be totally fine. But in the future, you never know what's going to happen. So you just got to be aware of that as an investor.
So is this anonymous crypto found, like, in the history of crypto, no crypto founder has ever been to jail. It's not a thing. It's never happened. It's very unlikely to happen as long as there's sufficient decentralization. In this case, with an anonymous founder who, I mean, if someone sold you a bad stove, it's very hard to make your money back. If in crypto, to get a refund, it ain't never happened, dude. It's not gonna happen. It ain't happening. Sorry. In a better world, maybe, but not in this world.
So Eric, Naveen, Daniel, and you guys have an opposing viewpoint as far as, or whatever your viewpoint is, as far as like, was this, like, is there a different way we should be looking at this? Because I know like Richard and the Ether have been looking at it from the point of view of, hey, the code did what it was supposed to do. But clearly there's another point of view that people are using to look at this. And the question, I mean, I have no doubt that the person who manipulated and took the money knew in their heart that they were doing something unexpected, wrong, and they were going to injure people who were in rolling your eyes and laughing at me. So give me your point of view. You're
I'm sorry, I
with
wasn't
me.
laughing at you. But like Richard said, there you go. Right. No, but like Richard said, this is a solved problem, right? Putting your servers closer to the NYSE servers near or in New Jersey isn't illegal. That's not market manipulation, right? What Soros did to the pound before they got to the ERM situation way back in the day, that was not market. That may be market manipulation, but like he didn't go to jail.
No.
Right? Did he? So what are we talking about? Like, I'm sorry, the Ether. Just let me finish. I'm sorry. We're talking about two things, right? Is the market manipulation in itself illegal, or is that like prosecution worthy? Probably not, because they didn't break any rules. They weren't like. This is not some ethics class where they're going to prosecute lack of ethics. Maybe if there was some stated like terms of service that says, oh, you can arbitrage in this way, but you also can arbitrage in that way, then it's fine, right? Patrick McKenzie from Stripe also had this great point of what flash loans technically amount to, because what they technically amount to is a proof of ability to finish this contract, right? I have X amount of funds, execute these steps. If it succeeds, give me back money plus whatever yield I'm paid. If it fails, here are your fees to execute the transaction. That's all that is. So if the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act, come on, really? I love Gabe.
I can tell you that this is also already a solved problem. So, I mean, we're dealing with what many people are considering flaws in code. Okay, well, do we have a way for dealing with flaws in code already? Yes, we do. Okay, what does that look like? It looks like bug bounty programs and responsible disclosure. Okay, well, what is responsible disclosure? Microsoft finds bugs in other people's stuff all the time. And how responsible disclosure works is when you find a bug in somebody else's stuff, you notify them through proper channels and you start a timer running. And that if they don't respond to you in 30, 60, 90 days, you start escalating what you're going to tell the public. And then once enough time has passed, they should have had it fixed. And if they didn't, you're going to release that knowledge to the public so the public can protect themselves, because it's more and more likely that an attacker has become aware during that time frame. So responsible disclosure already is how you handle software bugs. And this is a software bug. Now, what's the difference in this ecosystem? In a normal software bug, your ability to monetize that bug is extremely limited. So if you find a way to screw up someone else's system, how are you going to profit from screwing up their system? And it's illegal to do so. Whereas in crypto, you've got pseudo-anonymity. You've got unregulated markets, which is a feature, not a bug. You've got
For now.
this issue where if this becomes regulated, you lose all the efficiency. We could just all go home and run it on
Totally.
Oracle AWS or Amazon AWS. You've got
I want to play this one more time.
this issue where if this becomes regulated, you lose all the efficiency. We could just all go home and run it on Oracle AWS or Amazon AWS. So
if this all gets, I mean, the idea that we're looking for regulations, if this all gets regulated, I mean, if you're wanting the government to protect people and to get into this space, not only do you lose efficiency, but you lose the entire essence of crypto. You might as well just go to like some sort of like that's what he was talking about, Oracle and AWS, some sort of just digital finance, what the government says you can have, should have, etc. You might as well get rid of the blockchain. You might as well not. I mean, the technology is for naught. The whole idea is limited to no regulations in this space and the ability to literally, quite honestly, have the freedom to say bump the regulations. If I disagree with them strong enough, I can say bump the regulations as long as it's truly decentralized and there's not an individual, there's not an individual messing with it in the mix. You really limit the ability for for any government anywhere to come after anyone. So the idea that he's asking for regulations is just mind-numbing. Like, it is mind-numbing to me. Like, you might as well not even be in crypto. Like, you literally don't even understand the fundamentals of it. At least that's the way I get it. I would love to, one day I'd love to talk with Chris Blec, and I think this would be an incredibly interesting conversation. Of course, neither one of us are developers. We're just obviously clearly interested in this space. But I really don't understand this desire for regulations from the government, from government entities, primarily the like 3-letter type organizations.
With crypto, let's say that he decided to responsibly disclose to these anonymous founders. The anonymous founders would just use the exploit and steal the money through a friend. Isn't it funny that sushi launches instantly on a couple exchanges and then gets farmed by those exchanges to try and give centralized exchanges a foothold in DeFi so they don't lose their stranglehold and remain in the middle? Crypto is designed.
That's exactly right. He's making some great points right here. It's so good. Here, I have a solution, my solution to this here in a moment. We'll get to that.
And to get rid of middlemen. You keep seeing middlemen trying to get back in there, right? Which, by the way, to a degree is what most of these stupid projects are. It's middlemen. It's guys that control stuff. And if they don't come to work that day, or the Oracle guy decides, hey, you know what? Let's change the price. Oh, we don't use one Oracle. We use two Oracles. Wow, now 2 guys change their prices on their servers. It's a criminal joke. It's so stupid.
Well, you're
If
talking
you
about
rely on
projects
oracles, you're
with
waiting
admin
for failure.
keys, right? With God mode, this is where it gets confusing because there's such a wide spectrum of different governance methods and lack of governance methods, etc. But the ones that do have God mode admin keys can do that. And related to what you said there about the friend who could do XYZ with the information provided by whoever developed the code, that's been, for me, a major point of concern. As an adversarial thinker and looking at things like Harvest and things like
The hacker
Yearn,
gave them 2.5 million. Does that seem a little weird to you?
that's
Doesn't
been
that seem
like
just a
this
little
calling
weird to you?
card that hackers have been leaving for some reason, right?
Exactly.
With other.
No, see, this is naive. No, hacker, no. That's Richard's point. I think this is what Naveen's trying to say. No, is it not possible that the actual developer is the one responsible? I mean, that's not a calling card.
It's a it happened with ECM, EMC.
Yeah.
Yeah, that one. That's
But
exactly
look, I mean, I've said it multiple times. Nobody knows the code better than the developer. So with that said, and this goes for Andre, this goes for the Harvest guys, this goes for anybody who's developing these really highly complex smart contract ecosystems. All eyes, and this is, this back in March, this same kind of exploit happened with one of Andre's contracts back in March of this year. And I was sort of leading the charge about, hey guys, when it's so complicated that nobody can understand it except the developer, and then some crazy liquidity exploit comes along that it would be really hard for anybody who's not super familiar with the code to understand or figure out, of course you have to consider the developer as a potential suspect. Doesn't mean that they did it. It means that you can't rule them out. So now in this situation, when they have an admin key, in addition, to me, it's like, whoa, okay, pull out, because that's a possibility for how this exploit went. Plus, they still have an admin key. They could shut down the website today, and while that website's down, just pull it all out. So
If you replace the word complicated or complex and just replace the word high attack surface, you get more traction in the same number of words, basically. So,
all right, Richard. All right, Richard's trying to be a wordsmith. I don't know if that's if you actually get more traction with the average person or not with that phrase change. But Chris says something that's really good there. I mean, you got to look at the dev in these sort of situations. You would have to. It's like if there was a murder in your family, the family members, the people closest, are going to be suspect. The one closest to the contract is the dev. You have to look at the dev in this sort of example. And then he's right. When you talk about the God keys, it's the whole next level. I'm not really sure of Chris's angle in DeFi. Like, I'm not certain if now I'm at the place where I'm like, maybe it's not about truly decentralization. Maybe he doesn't care about that. Maybe his whole thing is trying to be the watchdog to prevent other people from getting hurt, which is never going to be effective. Like, you can always save one or two poor souls here and there, but you're not going to save anyone overall in crypto. It's just not going to happen. We're going to listen a little bit more, then we're going to wrap this up, and you can come to Chris's channel to watch the full video.
what is Andre building? High attack surface contracts. Okay? Because that's what they are.
Yeah.
When you introduce complexity, you are going to get the shit attacked out of you. Software is hard. Financial software is even harder. Blockchain financial software is pushing the limits of hardest possible. It's like you cannot treat this like move fast and break things.
Richard, tell your people to stop promoting Hex in here.
Guys, stop showing Hex in here.
The irony of this one, by the way, all the Hex guys are in here shilling, but Richard practically tells everyone to shill Hex constantly, nonstop, anywhere, in any time. I almost want to be like, Richard, teach them how to do some actual real marketing than just shove bumper stickers and stickers everywhere and go into everyone's stream and just slam Hex and go into everyone's YouTube comments and talk about Hex. That doesn't win anybody over. But I think it's hilarious that he gets called out right here a little bit. And of course, Richard tells him to pipe down.
I like having Richard here.
Everybody knows that
don't
I'm
ruin
here.
my
They
chat.
know what's up. You don't have to hit the chat, guys.
I let him wear the shirt,
Don't spam
okay?
the chat.
That's all you're getting.
Yeah.
I will take you all out. All
Yeah,
right.
sorry about that.
Okay, Chris, you just sounded like the hall monitor that didn't have any authority in school except being a hall monitor.
Eric, Daniel, we haven't heard from you guys yet. What do you think of this?
Yeah.
All right, if you want to hear what Eric and Daniel have to say, you can come and watch the full video. The biggest thing to me is how they talk about ethics and morals, and there's something ethically wrong. Here's my solution to this. At the end of the day, projects will live and die on their brand, and their brand will be whether they're good or bad. And of course, bad guys can create new brands and create new projects. That's part of decentralization. You're never going to get rid of, never, ever, ever going to get rid of bad guys or unethical people. And if you want decentralization because you want the efficiency, and because of the efficiency is why you get such high interest on certain staking projects, legitimate like staking projects and DeFi projects. You can actually make legitimate, like, good interest on solid projects, for example, like Compound even. Be able to be in a liquidity pool, for example. The only reason liquidity pools exist on Uniswap has everything to do with decentralization. Liquidity pools do not exist on centralized platforms. Why? Because that quote unquote liquidity pool is created by the centralized platform. They're the one earning profits. DeFi offers, and crypto in general offers, a certain level of economic freedom that does not exist. And you're never going to have that freedom if you try to get government in place to constantly regulate and fix things. If you want the government when you ask for a centralized authority to come in and protect you, you don't get to tell them how to protect you. And that is the challenge, because now all of a sudden they take, all of a sudden you can't be a liquidity pool provider unless you are an accredited investor. And that simply sucks for the average person who wants to throw a little bit of ETH in Uniswap and make a return on their few $100s. Why shouldn't you be able to do that? Well, you can right now in DeFi. And I'm not saying that Chris per se has a problem with that, but you got to accept the fact that the problem with politics and everything is people always want someone else to create this utopian environment. It does not exist. It will never exist. We're a whole bunch of imperfect human beings. There are no saintly angels going to run the government. Corruption will always exist. The more centralization that you have, the greater the corruption is going to be by a few people. So at least in a decentralized environment, there are projects that will succeed. They will have a good reputation, a reputation that may last for many years and hopefully in the future, many decades. Those projects deserve whatever accolades and attention they get. But when a project fails, you just will have to learn in crypto to go in small, see how things go, understand a project, see how it's working, see if it's decentralized, fully decentralized, or is it centralized? And if it's centralized, you just recognize the risks that come with that as well. But the idea that something is immoral, such as this sort of exploit, because it wasn't really a hack, it was literally just an exploit. The idea that it's somehow immoral, I understand, but are you going to stop the immorality? Keep in mind, they didn't break the contract. And who did it? Like, the idea that there's $1 billion in this project and people are still staying in there after this sort of a hack, then, I mean, you understand the risk you're taking. And those people want to stay in there. Should they be able to stay in there, or should the government come in and shut down the project? And even though 25 million out of 1 billion, which is a drop in the bucket, some single digit percent, even though 25 million got exploited, should the government come in and say, for everyone else to say, we're going to shut it down? Is that really the answer as well? I don't know that that's the answer as well. By the way, this is I recommend, I listened to a good half of this, and it gets good in there. I mean, Chris actually mentions P3D, which I think is hilarious. The other guys act like they don't know what P3D is. I'm like, where were you at in the Ether space a couple of years ago if you don't know what P3D is? Are you new to crypto? Were you not in Ethereum? Or are you just playing dumb? Because P3D was the biggest thing that hit Ethereum back then, in my personal opinion. Hey, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you've enjoyed this video. Again, I'm going to ask, come subscribe to, in the description, I'm going to put Chris's channel. I'm going to put Richard Hart's channel. Go subscribe to their channels. Hit the thumbs up over here. This was a great stream. Chris has a lot of substance he's discussed, and it's worth checking out his channel. And of course, you'll learn a lot just from watching Richard's live stream. He's going to shield Hex to no end. He acts like Hex is going to be the #1 crypto in the world, etc., etc. Just expect that. I actually think the #1 issue with Richard is that he created Hex. I think that Richard could have ultimately the next bull market. I think that he could have been, the next, true thought leader. He sees himself as a thought leader, true educator in this space. But ultimately, I think he wanted more. He wanted the notoriety of having a project that was going to be successful. He wanted to be a developer, and he wanted to make those gains. That's the reality. And most of us want to make gains in some way, or we wouldn't be here in crypto. But what you'll learn about Richard is he's one of the original idealists or so in the crypto space. Like, he understands why this industry and technology was initially created, and he still holds to some of those fundamental beliefs. It's definitely worth, if you're going to be in crypto, he's one of the voices you should at least listen to periodically on what he has to say. It's awesome. Hey, ladies and gentlemen, this is Crypto Wealth. Thank you so much for watching. Remember, crypto equals freedom.